city government and the police to respond to that. And so we can't define what the community,
I think you
what their
just
reaction.
did.
Okay.
I think you just did when you said involvement. Because you're right, the community can't change the rules or change how the police are interacting. All they can do is exactly what you're doing, make these suggestions that get to people that hopefully get enacted on. So,
I think that's Isaac and Ernie
Isaac,
might be
yes,
in
thank
front of
you.
me.
When I saw this Aggrieved families and personally affected citizens, my first comment is why is this particular stakeholder group held in this area of town? Or wouldn't Cesar Chavez Community Center have been maybe a more appropriate venue where we may have reached out to more people that are aggrieved?
And what area of town are you suggesting?
I said, like, for example, around the, what we call the Cesar Chavez Community Center area, International Zone, San Mateo, and Louisiana.
And I can tell you that through this report, we can make that suggestion known because I don't know, they're looking at possibly having, if there's enough interest, more of these, and we can certainly make that suggestion.
Most of the people who are aggrieved and personally affected by this can't even get to this place.
Just out of curiosity, how would you reach those people? Like, how would you suggest
Well,
you
for
reach
example, there's a Cesar Chavez Community Center right there in that area.
them? Yeah, so like, would we put up posters or?
Yes.
Well, there was an ad in the Alibi, that's how I found this, I'm not sure how you found this.
I'm just
I found
wondering.
the group that I was with.
And,
Diane, this is what I think, that, when I call the police to my home, and, a two-story house up the road, I'm gonna be treated differently than maybe someone in the Southeast Heights of color. That's a lesbian couple near the university. That's not right. So there needs to be some kind of training to address people's prejudice and address it, and then have the training, like how, just like you're gonna be treated the same as I. A girl down the South Valley in 5 Points who calls about, we need that, and it's not there. It's not there.
So you're saying just from the get-go, every single person that gets approached by a policeman should be approached in the same manner?
Right, and no matter where they live. And I think I agree with you, because I come here to exercise. I can be here in 5 minutes. In fact, there's an exercise class at 1 o'clock. So would I have gone to Cesar Chavez across town? Probably not. And I have the means to do it, so I support what you're saying right now. This is not a place to have had this aggrieved. But I'm glad it's there, but I think it should have been more where people who have less resources can attend.
I can tell you that will go in the report, and it will also be a verbal communication to the gentleman who is charged with setting these up. So you will be heard.
I think for the community to go forward, I mean the whole community, there needs to be acknowledgement that something is wrong. The city went into the negotiation.
Acknowledgement from the city.
From the city. The city went into the negotiations with the Department of Justice being dragged into it. The mayor rejected asking them to come into it. There had been requests for it for a while. There still has been no acknowledgement that there's actually anything wrong. They're saying, okay, here's the minimum that we'll agree to. And that's what the settlement is. Despite even the urgings of some of the negotiators to make it a little stronger. There has been a resistance and even a rejection of the DOJ findings that shootings and abuses by the police are unjustified. And I think until there can't be real effective reconciliation and trust building, until there's an acknowledgement and admission that we've been doing things wrong. That will change a few things to avoid a lawsuit. Just like in I mean, I don't want to put it in the same thing. In South Africa, truth and reconciliation panels, and, you know, things like that. That also allows police to acknowledge things and support the community and support each other when things are good and when things are bad, without fear of that retribution.
At the end, you said truth and reconciliation. The first time you said something that I wanted to make sure got in the report, reconciliation and, do you remember?
Panels, truth and reconciliation panels.
I'm not
No,
sure
it's
what I
before
originally
that.
said.
That's okay,
I'm
reconciliation.
just spouting.
But you were spouting good, so, and, yes, Ernie.
And not to be critical of you, but I find that the question has a double standard.
Not a critical of me, it's what we were given, so please.
That this community has done everything that it's needed to do to reform APD. And we've been ignored at every level by the city government, which still hasn't found any wrongful deaths. The cops still have a license to kill. They've murdered citizens in the streets. There's been no indictments. There's been no firings. The mayor could have at least insisted that people be fired from the force. None of this is addressed in the DOJ report. It's not incumbent upon us, the employers of the government and APD, to change anything about the way we do business. They need to be compliant with the law and to their employers, period.
Great. And let me say, I need to back off on that. I said I wasn't responsible for the questions. I was responsible for that last one. So, and I don't take it personally, and your answer was great, so thank you.
I'm not sure, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Mary.
I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I feel like intuitively that you and I are on the same page in many ways, but I'm not sure that I understand the idea that because of this situation that I agree with you about, we can't do anything because it seems that because of this situation and nothing getting done and people not getting fired and the DOJ things being rejected, that we're the ones sitting in this room with the awareness and the passion to do something, so we have to do something. And when you say what you said, which are facts, I'm sure, it makes me feel helpless and powerless. And before this discussion got to this point, I was thinking something very simple. I was thinking, you know, continue doing what I'm doing, not thinking I'm just one person. When I see police officers, strike up conversations with them. What can we do? We can talk to them. Granted, that's not powerful enough, but it's one thing that I feel I can do. And when I see a police officer, I will talk to him or her. But I'm still wanting clarity from you on there's nothing for us to do unless you're speaking hyperbolically or something.
No, I
You
mean,
ever speak hyperbole?
oh, never. You've never heard me speak hyperbolically, have you?
Yes, I have.
My son once told a girl that he was going to kill her because she was teasing him in kindergarten, and the teacher said, "Did you tell her that you were going to kill her?" And he said, "I was speaking hyperbolically."
And let me tell you, I want to hear from you, and it's break time and there's
Let's
lunch,
do it.
so.
I
So
don't
go
go
ahead,
hear your
Ernie.
response. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, and I understand where you're coming from, and I didn't mean to be hyperbolic. But I think
You can't help
that Bill knows me too well. That to think that it's an equal relationship from side to side and that we have to bring to the table the same thing that we expect of our employees is a double standard.
Oh, so you're saying, so it is hyperbolic. You're saying we do have to bring something, but just not, the bigger effort is on their part. You're saying.
Well, that's where the change has to come from.
But it's not
is
coming
from the
from
police department.
And I think historically, Ernie's also referring to for the past 4 years of people coming to the city council every meeting, bringing the issues in front of them, writing to the mayor, trying to get an audience with the mayor.
Can I add something?
And
I- I'm
let me
gonna-
just add to it too.
I want to interrupt him because he's been talking a lot.
And
I know him.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay, and I
I know,
apologize.
all right. But I want to reinforce his point, and that is, I was at the kickoff meeting of this collaborative effort. I don't know if you were there, I
Yes, I
presume
was.
you were. The mayor was asked a question by Mike Gomez, directly. It said, is there a problem with APD? The mayor refused to answer that question. With a simple yes, no, he started down a path of opportunities and prosperity. I mean, things that did not address the question. Mike interrupted him and says, it's a simple yes, no question. The mayor says, I gotta be able to answer this question the way that makes me comfortable. That's not true. After this session was over, the mayor hung around a while, and I waited until there was an opportunity to ask him. I said, you could have forwarded the process a lot by just admitting that there was a problem with APD. And he still refused to do that, even off to the side where it had no political cost at all. And so let me read you from the Department of Justice, the settlement agreement that just came out a week ago. This is part 8, or paragraph 8. This agreement shall not be construed as an admission or evidence of liability under any federal, state, or municipal law, including but not limited to such and such, nor is the city's entry into this agreement an admission by the city, APD, or any officer or employee that they have engaged in any unconstitutional, illegal, or otherwise improper activities or conduct.
Although that language is common in settlements.
Well,
Liability.
yes, okay, but, I mean, there it is, it's a boilerplate.
But it's there
Yeah.
in print.
And let me just add really briefly that Larry doesn't go back far enough historically. The DOJ has been here before. There's been a history of abuse and use of force since the 70s, probably sooner or earlier, that's been documented.
And several reports.
This is old stuff. The city's been screaming, the community's been screaming on deaf ears for a long time.
Okay, so I'm gonna love to hear what you say about what we can do, because right now it sounds totally hopeless and dead.
Keep the pressure on. Keep the pressure on the city.
We are gonna examine that after we eat, take a break, and thank you. I love working with this group. And when we started, we had everybody give us an idea of their name, what part of the city they are in, and what draws you to this, and to want to participate in this.
Say again, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. I'm happy to say it again.
But I'll be honest.
When we started, we went around the room and asked people for their names and what area of town they're in, and what drew them to participating in this.
My name's Daniel Mora. I'm living in the Northeast Heights right now. And just all the stuff the APD's been doing, getting away with murder.
So what we did in the first half was we kind of identified, some of the experiences of the stakeholders here, and now we're into the solution part. What the questions for the next, this time together are going to be, how do you think your goals can be best achieved, and what are your specific suggestions and ideas? So starting a little bit more broadly, how do you think your goals can best be achieved? And the goals we talked about earlier, I guess, I don't know how I could do a full summary, but, the goals were for better communication, for the police and the community to have a more balanced idea of power, so that it's not them having power over. Ernie was very specific about the fact that the police and the city government are our employees, and that so far in his assessment, nobody's listened to what the community wants for years. So now we're into the solutions. What do we do to make things better? And we're specifically addressing the relationship between the police and the community and the interaction between the police and the community. So now is what's going to make things better. So, who would, first of all, cards.
There's cards if you want to write.
Okay, I'm not
If you want to think about this and write, you have one. Anybody else need?
We're good.
Okay, good. I'm going to put a couple more here just for future. So write down your thoughts and then we'll,
Wait, on what?
write down your thoughts on what can we do, the question that I just read and already forgot.
Okay, I remember.
It is, how do you think your goals can be best achieved? And the next one is for specific suggestions, and we'll work on the goals first, and if specific questions come out, or specific suggestions come out, we will use them. Lots of thoughts on this one. And those that just joined us, we do have water in the back, please. Feel free. Okay, it looks like we're all just about done. Isaac, you looked ready pretty quickly. Are you ready?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think the goals that we have progress in this, our dialogue between interaction with police has to begin with the city officials, starting with the mayor, the city council, play an active part in reforming APD. Also would include also the administrators and the managers within APD also play an active part. And if they have resistance, is simply get rid of them and get team players. Meet the stated goals.
So make sure that the staff is team players and
It starts at the top, starts with the mayor. The mayor needs to come out, make explicit statements about where the city should be in its interaction with the APD and the community.
Okay, so you're saying the mayor should let us know what his answers to the first two questions were
Yes.
first. Okay, thank you. Can we go around the table in order, or is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have a hard time imagining how trust in the community can be restored and how a change in the culture in the department can be accomplished without new personnel, preferably from completely outside of the department. I think we need to see.
New personnel in the police
In the
department.
police department, yeah. I think there needs to be someone or some combination of people from an outside perspective with a background in law enforcement in communities where they've addressed these kind of issues successfully. Someone that won't already have a stake in what's going on locally or those connections that will hamper them in making the changes that need to be a part of what we're going to see going forward.
So someone with a new perspective to actually be able to enact a new perspective. Thank you.
My first suggestion can probably, I was just thinking now, can probably be more powerful if there's a group or committee who actually forms to encourage or expand this. And that is expanding the number of individuals who agree to personally interact with officers, excuse me, toward the goal of, and this is a nod to Ernie, toward the goal of improving the officer's customer service. So, I mean, it's kind of like a grassroots, behind the scenes thing where, like, if all of us agree today that in the next 2 weeks when we see an officer, we're going to talk to her or him, and we're going to talk to them to get to know them as a community member, but we're going to have the agenda knowing that they need to be enlightened and reformed and so forth. So you have to forgive me as a therapist, of course I'm going to take the psychological approach. But I think, you know, part of our training as therapists is you can manipulate people. Make sure you use that to their advantage to help them, not to take advantage of them. However, if there's somebody who needs to be reformed, then you up the level of so-called manipulation. But I wouldn't really call it that. It's by getting to know them and working with them. If we all did that here, but we actually formed a group who would go out and multiply bit by bit and expand, you know, like concentric circles, you know, something could happen, because it sounds like nothing's happening, and we can't start at the top. It's not working, so. And then the second one is provide police with psychological training, even if among mental health providers we have to find volunteers. I am willing to go the extra mile and work with mental health providers to provide, if they can't pay for this, you know, I have enough energy, thank God, and I have enough motivation that I would be willing to do that and find people who would be willing to. But for God's sake, provide them with mental health psychological training. And then the third thing related to that is services offered to them, particularly with their trauma issues, because we know that trauma creates violent behaviors. You know, mental health providers who care enough about their community and who have enough means to be able to provide services to the officers with trauma issues on a sliding scale.
Right?
So I think we need a lot more of that psychological involvement, and I'm glad Victoria's not here because she would say, no social workers. But I think we need more, and not just social workers, therapists and counselors and psychologists. Sure.
Okay.
My goal is to see public policy creation to guide the police operations. And right now, I think the situation is that basically police create their own policy. Now, the police are actually under the executive branch of the government, and so it's the mayor who's responsible for the police department. In this city, at least, that's been delegated to the chief administrative officer, who's Rob Perry, and the mayor has backed off from that. But ultimately, the mayor is still responsible. And ultimately, what has to happen is power has to be taken away from the mayor or relinquished by the executive branch so that the public can become more involved. And one way to do that, and this is my suggestion, is that we create a public policy commission, or a police policy commission, which includes members of the public. So it's
police.
And police and others. But right now, all police policy is created by police or the executive branch of government. And so even though, and the way I think history tells us is that politicians don't like to be involved in controversial things like police activities. And so if they can give the responsibility to the chief to do what they think is the right thing to do, and then if there's heat, the chief of police takes that heat, and they can distance themselves from that. But in fact, the mayor is the one who's, and the executive is who's responsible for the behavior of the police. Now, one way to back off from that, or one way that the mayor can save himself, is to include the public in this process. Because right now, I mean, this is back to my drug war example, I don't know if I mentioned that before, but there's so many laws that have been passed by Congress and legislatures, and they primarily, they started with the war on drugs, that's where we really went overboard on criminalizing things. And the result is that those laws have been abused as much or more by the police than they have by the people who they're breaking. And they use those laws as a way to arrest people for minor offenses and then make this lead to something greater. The other thing is that the police departments actually benefit financially from making drug arrests. They can seize property, they can seize, well, that's one direct way that they benefit. But basically, there's incentives to arrest people for drug offenses because the police themselves can benefit from that. That should be removed. That isn't something that the public needs hanging over their heads.
You're bringing up something that I don't know if anybody else is aware of, but that's foreign. How do the police benefit?
They can keep the property they seize in a drug raid.
Right, and who gets to keep it?
The police department.
The police department, or does it go to the government? Or?
No, it goes to the police department.
Okay.
And so they can now spend it for, any
Gotcha.
more guns or more coffee makers, whatever they decide to a large extent. So in fact, there's this is a fairly widespread practice across the U.S. And if you have a county that happens to have an interstate highway going through it, you can stop traffic on this interstate highway on some pretext. You can. This has been done. There's actually, recorded videos of this, where the officer stops this person, asks them how much money they're carrying with them, gets them to surrender their money in lieu of having a search or an arrest, and that money is then confiscated, and you have to sue to get it back. And the presumption is that if you have more than a certain amount of money with you, you're using it for some illegal activity, such as buying drugs.
Okay, so again, we go back.
This isn't something I made up, by the way. It is. It's very frightening. So.
Okay, so going back to suggestions for improvement, is there any suggestion?
My suggestion for improvement is that that behavior of police is something that's set by policy. Right now, the policy is made by the police department. The police department says we can benefit by stopping people on the interstate and taking their money, and we can do that. It works. And I'm suggesting that the public has a right to have an input into that, and that there be a commission or a policy-setting body, which includes members of the public, that says, no, you can't seize assets from interstate. It may be legal, there may be a law that allows you to do this, but you're not going to do it in our department.
Okay, great, thank you.
So,
your turn, Daniel.
My turn? I was busy writing.
Now you get to do what you came here to do.
All right. Well, community policing, I think the community needs to be more involved. Everybody has a say in something, but no one actually steps up and actually does anything about it. I think the community should get more involved. And accountability for police, if not the police themselves, like who's accountable for what the police are doing? It seems apparently it's not even the police themselves. It's not the mayor. No one's taking responsibility for the actions taken by the officers who have killed 28 civilians here.
So you want a clear idea of
who's gonna
when this happens, who is responsible? Is it the police commissioner? Is it the mayor? Is it
or
the
is it the
police
guy who
officer?
pulled the trigger? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Who's gonna take responsibility? Apparently no one is so far. And, okay. How about de-escalating actions instead of escalating actions by police? Right away, they're so quick to pull out their machine guns and say they're gonna shoot penises off or whatnot. Why don't they send somebody over there and say, hey, take it easy, is everything okay? Now put your guns down, you know what I mean? They escalate everything. I don't care if it's a car accident or a murder, it doesn't matter. It seems like they escalate everything.
So you want a true focus on de-escalation first?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. What about the, like, mental health evaluations for the police force? Like, how about before they become
Yes,
police
yes, yes.
officers, not after they killed somebody, you know what I'm saying? There's some officers that shouldn't even be in uniform whatsoever. I'm proud that they served their country, whatnot, but by putting it off on a PTSD moment, he should never have been in a uniform or together, so. What about,
So is it important that the mental evaluation includes looking for PTSD?
of course, of course, even in, the POC have more actual control over issues for the police. Seems like they have no control whatsoever. They can recommend whatever they want, but nothing actually is being done about it.
You said POC?
The POC.
What's that?
Police oversight.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So, repeat that.
They have like no control over it.
Okay.
They talk about it, but they have no control over it.
So
What's being
POC
done.
needs a little bit more teeth than,
How about a lot more teeth? How about teeth to jab? The gumming it ain't working no more.
thank you, no gumming, it won't be out. Thank you. And that was all of yours, you're complete?
Yeah, I'm complete, thank you.
Thank you. Ernie,
And,
it's
well, I
up
want
to
to
you.
echo Daniel. The first thing that I wrote down was accountability. We need accountability. Not only professional accountability, but accountability to the law that governs all of us, the civil rights that are in place for the entire community. And that government officials and police departments are not supposed to be exempt from. That's just so far outside of the Constitution. And now I'm going to be hyperbolic.
Oh, darn, I wanted to look up the definition on our break and I forgot.
And take Yancey's, I think we need a drain and flush from the top down.
Yes.
Not just the leadership at the police department, but from the city government. You know, I always try to see the bigger picture. It was the Chamber of Commerce who selected this mayor and put this mayor in office. So it's the moneyed few in this community who are driving the public policy that doesn't serve any of the people that are paying the bill, that pay for the wrongful death suits, that pay for officers that are known in the DA's office, in the public defender's office, as abusers who've been on this force for 20 years and are making $96,000 a year, and they're known abusers. And they remain on this police force.
You're saying known abusers in the carrying out of their jobs?
And the carrying out of their jobs. Or even the one officer I have in mind also participated in a cover-up to keep his drunk son out of jail. This is de rigueur in this police department. It's not exceptions. And I also, that the influence is even broader in that many people have made the case that the current police chief was appointed by the governor, even though the mayor was responsible on paper for selecting him, because he came from the state police department. And it's also worth mentioning that the same group that petitioned for the DOJ to come here petitioned the mayor not to reappoint until the DOJ report was out and not to select without community input. So it's another example of an
So,
absentee, recalcitrant mayor that has abused his power in his office. And so, yes, I am hopeful that meetings like this, signs on the street, letters to the editor, Facebook, email, is the way that the people have of addressing this issue when the government is entrenched in not solving this problem.
So, have you gotten all the suggestions out of that?
I hope so.
Okay, great, so, thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I would really like to see a better way of examining the things that the department is actually doing well. We have metrics for examining arrests. We have a system, however imperfect, for examining shootings. But I think we need a system for examining the interactions that are going successfully. That we need to, for instance, we have the lapel cameras for looking at something that goes wrong. We can use that same technology to look at the instances where officers are interacting successfully with people that have mental health issues, where they're successfully de-escalating a situation. And we can look at that and see what did that officer do correctly? What lessons can we take from this behavior? And in so doing, we can identify the officers that are interacting successfully and make mentors and examples of those officers and reward those behaviors and pass that behavior on to other officers and make it clear that that kind of successful interaction will be rewarded. That's what is expected, so that we're not merely coming at the department with a stick, which tends to always cause an adversarial situation, but also offering a carrot to the officers that are behaving the ways that we want to see wider throughout.
So to reinforce the good behavior. And how would that look as far as, how would the community get it? How do we convince the news to cover the good stuff, or how do you see that carried out?
Yeah, that's a great point. Maybe we need a program that would very concretely award or decorate an officer that had, perhaps even taken on a personal risk in a situation that plausibly using a firearm could have been one option, and instead found a way to back off of the situation or handle the situation differently, and reward that as an act of heroism, as something that is brave and noble, in the same way that we are all too quick to reward people for going for their gun as the hero move. I think what we really need to emphasize is that, if anything, it's even more heroic to accept that extra measure of personal risk on behalf of the community, step away from the situation and see if it can be dealt with in some other fashion.
So you're looking for a culture where we redefine heroism.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add to this idea, and that is that I think if you're going to reward police for good work, that reward ought to come from the public, not from the hierarchy within the police department.
Then that gives us more power.
That's the measure of whether they're doing the job that we want them to do. And they can't be rewarded for doing the job that the police themselves think they want to do unless they checked with us first.
So again, how would that work? How would the public reward?
Well, first of all, you need more information coming to the public. You need a public body that has insight into what's going on with the police. And I think that has to be some kind of a commission created that includes public members. And it can be the same commission that sets policy, but it's in fact, it's somebody who is outside of the police department, and at least some of their members are outside of the police department and represent the public. Right now, there's no one who represents the public in police matters. And so, the police matters. I mean, I'm more interested, or initially I was more interested in setting policy publicly, but I think you reward good behavior publicly as well, and it's the same function, it's the same people who do that. It's the same body that does that. So I mean, I think that's just a supplement to your idea is all, I think.
Would that include whistleblowers as well?
Well, I think it should, yes, but, yes, exactly, it should. We haven't got to that, that's pretty touchy.
Rough question there.
No, I understand, I think that's a good point. You're right.
So should we make it on the report, possibly including whistleblowers, or is that
Well,
a side comment?
may I say that in the consent decree, I don't know if I brought the page with me, I can see it really quickly, that, but I do remember reading that one of the misconduct complaints and investigations, the city and APD agree to accept third-party and anonymous complaints. So it's in the consent decree.
Thank you.
That doesn't mean that our leadership will implement it.
That's correct.
That does not mean that our leadership will implement it.
So would I then be able to say in the report that you want to see the leadership implementing everything in the DOJ agreement? Would that be your
That
suggestion?
that would be fair. I don't think, of course, the DOJ agreement goes far enough. And to be hyperbolic again, and I love the ideas of the community rewarding police that do well, but I think police that don't do well should go to jail and be fired. And we don't have that in this community. When a cop says 2 hours before he shoots a homeless man in the foothills that he's gonna shoot him, and then he still is on the force, and the DA hasn't brought charges against him, why should we reward any cop in our community if we have to take this? And I'm being hyperbolic, I know. But let me get back to
We got your number.
Bill's point too, is that as part of that is, again, police oversight commissions that are responsible to the public, not to the city government. This is the problem we have here. The city government is not responsible to the public's needs. So, and what Yancey mentioned too, it goes to the idea that's been brought forth about we need more neighborhood policing. That would help establish community relationships if the same police are in the neighborhood for us, Diane, to get to know. You know, so.
Okay, I want to go back to your suggestion about the POC, that it should be responsible to, or are you saying report to the public rather than to the city?
That it be outside of the parameters and the control of the city government.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking to put them into ways that we can
Coherent.
put them into the report as well as possible to really represent you.
I'd like to add a little something, although you've been silent for a while, go ahead.
I would say that,
And I'm sorry, I should back up because you're not completely, actually, could I get you to move over a
sure,
couple?
I'll do that once I finish
Yes,
talking.
thank you.
But what I like to say is that being a good cop has its own rewards. And just saying that we're gonna reward cops for good behavior, saying that we have some bad cops, it shouldn't be in the first place. So that's the attitude we should take. We're gonna hire police officers who are good people. And that behavior of being a good cop is a reward of it in itself. And it's a result of the training. It shows that the training that they've been through. It shows that they're experienced police officer. They know how to behave professionally. That's the reward they get. And but to say that we're going to reward good behavior, so there's a lot of bad behaving cops that shouldn't be on the force. Let's get rid of the bad ones first.
So address the situation where cops are known to stepped outside
Yes.
of their, what their level of authority and whatnot. Thank you. Who was it? Oh, it was Bill, were you next? Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't want to leave you out.
Sorry, now I lost my train of thought.
Dang, you
What
should have
were-
wrote it down.
Yeah, I know, what were we, what was this? I'll
He was talking about the.
Community oversight.
the media
Oh,
oversight.
yeah, I wanted to clarify a little bit about the POC. It's now the POB, the Police Oversight Board.
Oh, thank
And
you.
it's part of the larger group of, which includes the executive director, and it's called what, there's another name. I actually have the creating ordinance here, but. in
We're
any-
talking POB now, not.
Right,
POC.
it's now POB, but they are a creation of the council with the consent of the mayor. I mean, the mayor could have vetoed the creation of the POB, but he signed that off. But basically, they're a creation of city government, and so you can't have them completely outside of city government because they draw their authority from city government. So I think it's important that they, first of all, have good members, and then that they have some power that they can exercise, and they can do that publicly. And I think most of that is in the ordinance, but the details will come out as we do that. They obviously need more teeth, because they can only make recommendations to the chief. They can review cases of police violence, but then after that, as far as making policy recommendations, that's supposed to be half of their job, but they're only recommendations. And the chief of police has within 30 or 45 days to respond to those recommendations. And he doesn't have to accept them. So that's where the teeth are lacking. And that's where there's
So
some,
you'd like them to be stronger than recommendations?
that's right.
Is that all the way to becoming instant policy?
No,
or is it?
I don't think in a practical sense you can dictate that a board, a public board like that will create instant policy, but there have to be very good reasons given why what they recommend, if it's done properly with the right research behind it, why that isn't implemented as policy. And right now, all the chief has to do is to furnish his reasons, but I think it needs to be made stronger than that. I mean, there has to be some movement toward giving more authority to the public.
So it can't be at the police chief's whim, it has to be for a reason that is made public?
Well, and I'm not sure that even is quite enough. I mean, he can give a reason which he makes public, which isn't particularly valid. I mean, that's done the courts tend to do that a lot. I mean, and the judicial system tends to do that. I mean, what seems reasonable to public is something that, or unreasonable to the public is something that works just fine for the legal system. So I'm not, I think that, I'm not quite sure how you do this, but I think there has to be more weight given to
what the POB
that.
says.
I mean, so maybe what you can take is the findings that the POB comes up with and pass those on to another group, which includes public members and the police department. So when the police gets the recommendations, it isn't he alone who receives the recommendations, but it's a public policy committee that receives these recommendations, and they have a discussion about how to implement them, and that goes, and then they furnish their opinion as to whether these can be done or.
So they get to fine tune it with police people who are on the job and have frontline experience. And
Yes, right, that's right. And you've got public, you still have new public people
participation.
right, and through appointments, but, I mean, all of these things, I think, need public, need an appointed public member, representative, and then they also need to be aired publicly,
Great,
so.
thank you. See where we're at. We've got, anything else on this topic?
Well, this is totally trivial, but
Hey, totally say it.
I so wish we would go back to the old paint scheme on our police cars. The white cars with the little balloons on the fender, so much friendlier than the black and whites we're running now.
No, don't change your name. You should put that up.
We just got the sheep off the cars.
Well, we'll see what happens with that one.
Was it?
So our final question today is, and I do want to say that you do have evaluations there that we'd like for you to fill out before the end. So if at any point you want to get started on that, do that, or just stick around, please, and do them. What are your specific suggestions and ideas? Now, you really gave us some there, but if we can break it down any more and get some more specific suggestions and ideas. Do you have cards, or anybody need more cards? Doesn't look like.
They can be game show music.
What was it? Yeah, da, 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 da. A card, are you good?
No, I'm still using this.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is the real work here, folks. How much time did we need for your final thought, which I think I had?
What?
You tell me something on how much time before they leave something? Ah, we should have wrote it down.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing that Tyson was saying about what's gonna happen with this, all this stuff. Just so people know, there's a report that's gonna be generated.
Oh,
You can't be listening.
I'm so glad you forgot. Reinforce my activity. Okay, everybody ready?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask you a quick question before you start. Are the notes from these meetings going to be available online?
Not at this point, that's not what's been planned. We're giving reports to the city. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with them, other than passing them on to the UNM folks who are getting all of the information together to form one concise, there's a lot going on in the other room that will match what was going on here, and there's some things that are different. So, okay. Anybody want to start this round?
Well, I think I did my specific suggestions in the last round, so I'll do it exactly backwards and make my general thought.
Hey, go ahead.
I think it's interesting how often we talk about the interaction between the police and the community as though the police are not a part of the community. And I think that integration from both sides is critical to the success of any effort to change the difficulties that we're having with the department. And that it has to go both ways, that the law enforcement has to understand the concerns of the public, and the public really has to understand the concerns of law enforcement, and to realize that those concerns are valid in both directions. Because without that communication, you're just going to have two divided camps that are going to scream at each other rather than listen to each other. It isn't going to get us anywhere.
Thank you for that, and there is probably thousands of police officers around us that, I've heard that from them many times, that we are not, it's not the police in the community, we are community. So thank you for that. Anyone else?
Well, I'd like to see the resources that we use for jails diverted to help for people. I mean, we've created this monster, and it's a private prison industry basically, and we feed that industry, with the help of the police and first of all the legislature passes a lot of laws, a lot more laws that are necessary that create criminals out of people who aren't. And they get arrested by the police, they get thrown in jail by the judicial system, and then the profits all go to the private prison system. And we don't need to do that. But when it has this appearance that it's just feeding some private enterprise, there's something wrong with that. And I think that one way is just to say, all right, we're not gonna build jails, we're not gonna fill up jails anymore. We're gonna use the money that we're gonna put into jails into resources to help people for whatever it is, whether it's mental health programs, drug intervention, rehabilitation, all these kinds of things. But our culture is much more interested in punishing people than it is in helping people.
So take some of the resources, the financial resources going to jails, and instead of trying to fill the jails, figure out a way to use that money to keep people from going to jail.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, prevention rather than detention.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other suggestions, specific?
I'd like to see that for investigations that go to the DA's office, that there be an external body that does those investigations, not the police department.
Okay.
Right now, our police department does the investigations of the information that goes to the DA. It's been proven to be corrupt. That has to be reformed, and as far as I know, that wasn't addressed in the consent decree. And that's a huge problem, which I have to reiterate with Bill. I've been doing independent research on our absolutely corrupt and filthy prison system in this state. And it's third world. It's third world. And it's privatized, and it's a cash cow for everybody that's bringing food in or supplying phone services or services to inmates that they don't get.
So again, what would you like to see instead?
I'd like to see that right now it's costing us $1 million a year in fines for MDC,
MDC?
the Metropolitan Detention Center, which was found not to be meeting the legislative mandate. So they're being fined by the state, and because it's a cash cow for the attorneys on both sides, it's at a standstill. Their non-compliance with law has not been resolved. When they're full, they ship inmates to private prisons in Texas. We need a total reform of...
I'm still going to flip it onto what do we do, and you're...
What do we do?
there.
We reform it by taking the money out of the privatized prison system, and I totally agree with both Isaac and Bill that we need to de-escalate what is criminal and not use prisons for housing people with substance abuse problems, or right now we use MDC housing housing citizens awaiting hearings that haven't even been charged with a crime, and they're in MDC. We pay for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're kind of late on suggestions at this point. Is there anything else that you folks would like to say on this subject? Unless you have any thoughts of any other questions we can...
Oh, I remember the question. I just
Yay!
no, it's actually important. It's a question I asked Isaac just a little bit before, but the real question is that the city has attempted to reach people to get them involved in this process, and as you can see by the results, it's we could say it's slightly lacking. And so we were talking about that at lunch, and do you have any suggestions of how we could reach out to people to get them to attend these meetings better, so we can get their suggestions? It was a great point you made. I mean, we already told the lady that's running the program at lunch. we are responsive to you. And, you know, she was like, wow, yeah, really, you know, so, you know, something will happen to that.
Yeah, for one thing, you can get these, make the announcements to local churches in the areas, local churches,
Excuse me.
the various agencies that are helping the homeless and other indigent folks. Place announcements there in those places where you'll be having your hearings and your committee venues,
Thank you.
and to various activist groups.
Yeah, I
And
think,
that you can give them, go to their Facebook pages.
PSAs,
Well, I was just gonna say, I think, compartmentalizing this a little bit would help. I mean, the way, I went to the kickoff meeting and I got this, stole a copy of this schedule.
hey,
Oh, I actually, no, you asked for it. You asked me for it, as a matter of fact.
You
and
remember me, okay.
I do
all right,
remember
yes,
you
okay,
now.
I got it, with your permission.
Yes, you did.
But the thing I object to about this is that it says mental health, you know, the first meeting was mental health community and related service providers. I don't fit into that category. Aggrieved families and personally affected citizens, I don't fit into that category. First responders, I don't fit into that category. So I know that it was said that everyone was invited to attend all these meetings, but I think that has to be emphasized.
Yeah.
And that these meetings are public meetings, and we're inviting especially these people that we have, because we want to make sure that we include them. But what we really want to include are just members of the public that should be involved. And every member of the public should be involved, but of course, you have to work hard to get that. I mean, I have some experience in trying to get public participation in a variety of things, and it's very difficult to do.
Right.
I don't know what the answers are.
Okay, and,
You end up with the same core group of people coming.
right.
yeah.
And Nori did suggest the idea of having some scheduled that are not for specific stakeholders, they're just for community.
Right.
And so we are certainly going to give that,
Yeah, we'll
make
pass
that suggestion, pass that on.
I
And
want-
you know what? Since we've got a little time left, I will take one.
So sorry, just because it was this, in terms of looking at reaching out to the community, bringing these conversations to the community, I think is so important. And if it was, even if they were neighborhoods and there was police from that neighborhood, that, like, it was mandatory that they came, at least some officers were present, so we could hear each other. I mean, that perspective in this facilitated setting is so critical.
Thank you very
Sorry.
much. I'm a facilitator, I can't give opinions. Thank you very much.
A suggestion would
Don't
be
be sorry.
invite officers.
So is that, to be sorry? No,
Don't be sorry.
no, not at all.
Can we invite officers? Is that something we can do? Can we go to our local police station and say, hey, I'm going to this meeting, can you send some people?
You personally,
Yeah.
as a
yeah.
community member and as a facilitator, would you?
I would love to, yeah.
I think that's
I
a
think that
lovely
if we all
suggestion.
did that, if we invited our local officers.
And I just stepped out of role badly, you won't tell, will you?
Say a therapist made you do it.
What was that?
A therapist made you do it.
That's right, you manipulated
I
me.
did.
And in certain communities, that might actually stifle the expected interaction from the community.
That's right.
Ah, okay,
Oh,
so
wow.
that's,
Police officers sitting next to you, it may not work.
But we could try it. I mean,
Well,
right,
okay,
select-
well, like I said, it probably will not work in certain communities.
And let me
and
reiterate.
again, we're saying certain communities,
Let
so.
me reiterate that, and I've heard people talk very eloquently about this culture of violence in the police department has made certain communities here totally non-responsive on any level to the police department, even for personal crime.
So how do we fix that again? If you can put that into terms of a suggestion.
Well, we need
that
a
would
police
be
department
lovely.
that serves the community.
Okay.
Before we can.
Yeah,
Before we can talk to
we do,
them.
that has to be done first before you're gonna change communities that have been abused historically by cops and by the city government.
So you're telling me not to put the cart before the horse?
Well,
Yeah, we're just put, yeah.
And I want to reiterate, you know, Shannon Triplett sent me an email inviting me to this meeting, and my response to it was, I'm not one of those people.
Yeah,
And so she responded, come.
Yeah.
But that's a problem with this format.
Thank you.
And there's PSAs on radio stations, there's the front page of the crappy newspaper that we have in Albuquerque that's supposed to serve the community with information that doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, they have done press releases and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah. On what, page A27?
Well, no, I mean, if the city has done, you know, because they can't.
Yeah, but
They can't dictate.
the city's website for this is atrocious. The city's website for this gives
Suggestions. What do we
incomplete
need?
information,
What do
it
we
needs
need?
complete information.
You improve the city's.
For the
website.
last
Thank you.
meeting, I had to call the facility to know what time it was.
Thank you.
Other people called the city and got misinformation about the meeting. Why does this look like pushback
Who
from
did they-
the city about really communicating with the
Do
citizens?
you know who they called in the city?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. I'm sorry.
That's okay, but I think that's a great suggestion, improve the website. Improve the website to give more complete information, more specific information times than,
Well, and it makes sense to me in a more bigger reform for us to be able to go to our city councilors' websites and get information like this there. Or for them to be emailing their clientele with this type of information. I mean, with electronic communications, this shouldn't be an issue.
Well,
Yeah,
and speaking
so
of
you wanna
electronic communications, if it were possible to do some sort of a virtual town hall on the issue, so that transportation would be less of an issue for people, you could possibly do it at a different time of day, or have a couple of different times of day, maybe an evening hour. There are a lot of people this day and age working 6 days a week, working, you know, days, that daylight hours are just not, and also that might address the issue to a degree if you could have some representatives of law enforcement, that intimidation factor might be much less of an issue if people weren't actually physically in the room with one another.
okay.
And Isaac's earlier point of venue.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
This is Whiteyville. There's two
So
other
put that in the report.
community centers that aren't in Whiteyville that would better serve the community than being up here in the Northeast Whites.
I gotta tell you, the minute he said that, I already visualized my email to people in high places and numerous ones, because I thought that was a brilliant comment. So it will be heard, I mean, it will be transmitted, absolutely, I guarantee that.
And we already have.
Yeah, actually,
That's how,
on a break,
that's how good we.
I've already talked to 3 people about it so far, so thank you. The one thing that I do want to say, again, stepping out of role, but those suggestions for having police at the table, I'm becoming a community member here to an extent from a professional vantage point. We did that years ago in Santa Fe. There was trouble between the activist community and the police department, and we had 3 or 4 sessions of getting them together for a discussion. We had breakout groups all over the room. Every group had police officers, and their conclusions were they both wanted the same thing: how the hell do we get it? And they worked things out, and things are still much better between the activists, and this was back in 2007, I think. So personally, as a community member, I love that idea, but that's my opinion, and I'm not supposed to give, so. So anyway, thank you all so much for all of this.
Thank you.
Would you please fill out the evaluation forms? And we really want your honesty, because we want to be able to continue to make this process better. We've got our meetings scheduled through January of next year, and we're adding more to it. and we have changed this process considerably from our first one to our second one, and because of what folks expressed needs in. If you folks have any suggestions, there are sheets at the front table, please fill them out. We want to do this as well as we can, because part of what we're in this for is that we believe in that this topic needs to be resolved.